All right, we are on air. It is the 15th of December, which means we are 15 days from feature freeze for Backdrop 1.6, which is pretty exciting. We're just going to run through some of the things that we're working on and try and establish what's going on in Backdrop land. Just so everybody knows, Backdrop has a community browser stack account that is currently disabled. I think we're probably going to want to use that before Backdrop 1.6 is released. So Nate, if you get a minute, if you could email them and have them turn it back on. They said as long as the person who created an account contacted it, they'd turn on the open source account again. But
okay,
just a to-do item there. That should be back shortly, everybody. But if you need it, just so you know, it's not there today. Infrastructure-wise, does anyone else from the PMC have anything to announce today? Nothing that I can think of. Okay. Backdropcms.org, we've got two things that we're actively working on. The homepage redesign, which Wes has been working on today, looks fantastic. I don't know if you have anything you want to tell anyone about that. Wes, no, it's coming along. We're shooting for release of the new homepage redesign about the same time as Backdrop 1.6 is released, but we'll see how realistic that is once we get into January. Other things we're working on, the showcase, I would like to spend some time on that today, but we'll see how some of these other issues go. We have a design, we need a view built. I've been lagging on that a little bit because we don't have content for it yet. And so some of the other things have seemed a little more important. Forum is also next on our list. So as soon as we get the homepage redesign out mid-January, we're hoping then we'll be able to focus on giving people a place to talk about Backdrop. All right, Backdrop CMS itself. Nate, do you want to take over bug fix?
Yeah, okay. Let me see. Okay, yeah, the install Backdrop in other languages issue 2329 is still pending. That really should be merged at just about any time. I don't think there's actually more work that needs to be done there. I had some notices about needing more tests, but we can't add more tests in the short term because the installer isn't covered by simple test, essentially. So that's basically moving from like a needs review to actually like we just need to get that committed. That's issue 2329. That's the only critical bug fix that we've got marked on. Oh, I'm sorry. That's funny. Sorry, the agenda is a little bit ordered in a funny way. Okay, there's also the full bleed hero fix for basis, which is also RTBC, which is 2190. So I think both of those issues are in a good place, and we could merge both of them and get out the next minor release, basically, or sorry, next bug fix release pretty much any time now. So that might be happening in the very near future. If it doesn't happen in the next week, then we probably wouldn't find it very worthwhile to make another bug fix release until 1.6 itself came out. So I'd probably say I'll try to get that in and a release made this week. And then we'll have one final release of 1.5, assuming there's nothing else that comes up that's critical, January 15th when 1.6 comes out. Okay, the 1.6 version that is slated for January 15th. As noted by Jen, we have 2 weeks essentially until January 1st rolls around, and January 1st is feature freeze for the 1.6 release. And we've got some work to do before then. The items that we've got slated for 1.6 that are still in progress include the reference module, adding that module to core. That's issue 1301. It looks like it's really quiet in that issue, but there's all of the work is going on in another location, and that's why. There's a reference module in contrib under backdrop contrib/reference, And looks like we have some work there that needs review from Jeff that needs to be updated. Mike, since you just hopped on, do you have anything that you'd like to add regarding the status of reference module?
Well, serendipity. Anyway, posted the pull request for getting the reference field test running. So it's running. Now we just need to actually add tests to it. So if anyone wants to help out with that, feel free to jump in. Basically, I'm thinking we need to look at all the other reference module implementations and make sure that we test for everything that they're testing for. Another issue opened up by Herb Duel is saying that we need to do access checks before displaying the entities, which I had somehow missed doing. So we need to figure out that, and I need to actually look into what the status of access, whether we have any sort of access functionality in the entity API, and whether there is a common way to check entity access. I know that's a contrib module in Drupal land, I think. Do you guys know what the current status of that is at all?
Yeah, as far as I know, some systems like nodes actually have like per entity access control, but everything else there's definitely no global system.
Yeah.
And the individual entities, I think that there's no more for other than nodes. Everything else just is protected by a single permission, as far as I know. Like access user profiles is universal kind of thing.
We added vocabulary specific taxonomy term permissions too.
For viewing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe it's edited.
I'll take a look at this thing. It sounds like the different entity types have like custom functions for this, which we're going to have to well, I don't know. Yeah, I need to dig into it. I don't know. Like currently, for display rendered entity, it's calling the user. It's calling the entity view function. So the question is whether the entity view functions are actually doing the access check at that point.
Got it. Okay.
Like if you go call node view, is it actually doing the node access check for the current user or not? It could be doing that. It could be working, but I need to actually make sure that it's working and that we are not showing content to people who don't have permission to see content.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as autocompletes go, like if we autocomplete term or user or whatever, the status on all of those things is that we do, and the actually recent security release was relevant to this, the one that came out a couple of weeks ago, that the pattern is that you take the query that does the select, and then you add a tag to the query that is entity type underscore access, like node access, user access, taxonomy term access. And then any modules that want to modify that listing of access control do so on that tag. And so the only modules that do that in core are on node access, and the only tests are on node access, but other entity types could in theory do that as well. So there is, I mean, as far as showing listings for autocomplete purposes, there is a pattern that we can leverage that is pretty constant. Entity type underscore access as a query tag, and that's
as a query tag. What do you mean as a query tag?
There's a method literally called add tag, and you add it to the select query. So it has to be a DBTNG query, and by adding a tag, that allows it to be alterable. So it allows hook query alter on that if it has a tag, essentially. And that's the way node access works for modifying listings of what should be shown in a node, or what should be shown in a listing. Sorry.
Okay, I will look into that and see how it does that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's take that one offline. But at least there is a method for solving autocompletes, and we'll need to work out what we do about individual entity, like if we have an entity checking access at that point.
Okay.
Okay. So that one's still coming along. I'm on the hook, I know, for helping with those automated tests. So I would say let's try to get in Jeff's suggestion to just stub it all out and then work from there on top of it, adding tests that match the current coverage. Also relating to entity reference, or to reference module, Jen, you've been heavily involved in another issue, the view modes one. Is that detracting from your ability to attempt the upgrade path for reference module?
It depends how much more work is needed on the view mode stuff. I noticed there was a bunch of good feedback over there, but it would be great if we could get more eyes on that, because the way the view modes administration interface worked in Drupal 7 was a little weird, and so we've added it, instead of kind of floating off in its own place under structure, we've added it into field UI, where you actually manage view modes for various different fields of different entities. And I think it makes a lot more sense there. That was a recommendation that 3 different people kind of all came up to at the same time. We're like, why don't we just put this in the place where we already deal with view modes? But it does present some user interface weirdness, as is typical with field UI. And we've got a couple of different solutions, a couple of different pull requests about ways to solve that, that we could use some feedback on, like how we're throwing in, like, is this turning into a field UI redesign, or is it the kind of thing that we can actually get in as part of a feature addition? So it would be good to just get more people, even if you just looked at the screenshots in that issue, just to weigh in and say, like, whoa, this is too crazy, or like, yes, this is a lot better user experience. That would be great, because I think both of those pull requests, regardless of which one we go with, are pretty close. It's just a matter of who's going to take them from where they are to being done. So it doesn't necessarily need me to work on it. We just need to decide which way to go, and then someone to kind of do the last cleanup.
Okay, so that was getting into the next item on the agenda, actually, which is the entity view modes pull request / issue, which is, I know, I segued in an awkward way there. I was asking about the upgrade path on reference module, if you would handle that. But I know I used the next issue as a segue, so sorry, that was awkward.
Well, yeah, I can work on that as long as I'm not working on this too. So exactly.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, Jen just gave a pretty good recap of issue 315, which is entity view modes, which is in a place that needs further review. She covered that pretty well. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next item is 2375, which is adding a media / file entity solution, which is a little bit broad. Yeah, Jed just changed the title there. It's actually now, we're really just talking about adding a view that has bulk operations for managing files at this point. And for really beginning at square one, that really means just deleting files. Jen, can you elaborate on whether or not that actually encompasses editing a file, or is that something that we'll add for a later issue?
So I was wondering about that. I was looking at what is currently in the file entity module, and it includes a URL to view the file, a URL to edit the file, and a URL to delete the file. In the pull request that I filed, the only one I added was to delete the file. So that's the only bulk operation that's there, is to delete. It's the only thing you can do per file individually as opposed to in bulk. But it would be really easy to add all of those things in later, because we already have the URL structure in place, like the root, like file / whatever. You just can't actually view files there now. I also only added one additional permission, or two. There was one to delete files and one to view the page where all the files are managed. But every one of those actions will need its own permission too. So I tried to do the simplest thing possible just for 1.6 so that we can have the listing in there, which would solve this bug of like people attach files to things and can't get rid of them. But I think it's going to be really easy to add all the other stuff later. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a good start for sure. I mean, you can already view the file, obviously, because it's just the URL to the file. And so the combination of view and delete and then edit can be handled at a later point. Seems adequate. Okay, that is in a state that needs review. Now that the view is actually attached.
Yeah, there were a bunch of other things that were missing from the pull request last week too. I don't know how that didn't get pushed up, but it's ready now. There's a view in there, and all the permissions and everything are all set. So.
Okay. Those items, I think, are those three are the ones that I think really should receive our focus for release. But there's more items in here that we are still hoping to complete. But they're kind of in a limbo state here. The first of these two are solutions for managing large number of blocks. If you've got similar block configurations across multiple layouts, managing those blocks across all the layouts at the same time, we need to come up with solutions to that problem. And so there's two pull requests that provide options to solve that problem. One of them adds a block copy ability that is at 2245, and one of them adds a region copy, which is at 1886. Both of these pull requests are like that they work from a technical standpoint, but both of them introduce inter-layout dependencies, where one layout now will be dependent upon another layout because it has a copy of like the master block or the master region from that other layout. And so technically this works, but it makes me really nervous from a site management standpoint about the kinds of problems you could get into with a bunch of layouts having interdependencies between each other, or even trying to keep track of where are the master blocks coming from, which layouts have supposed master blocks.
So I have an idea. What if in the first one we add to core, if that's just copy block for 1.6, we limited the layout source to the default layout, which is one that can't ever be deleted.
That's an interesting idea. I like that.
Because then I feel like we at least have the tool there for contrib to say like, hey, I want to copy from other layouts where it's not necessarily our responsibility. But we are giving people this feature that they've wanted that allows you to copy from something. And if you use the default, you know it'll always be there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that. Let's get that documented in the issue, because
I don't see how this really helps. Like, and just like, because yeah, I mean, that just seems like you're restricting people, and they're going to be confused of why they can't just choose layout and block. Like, because if I was like a user layout and I want to do a special user page or something like that, I'm like, I want to copy this block from the user layout, and it's like, yeah, I mean, just saying you can only do the default really cuts down on the actual usefulness of the function.
Right, it does.
And we've got and I feel like the confusion part of it is just sort of not really a technical architecture problem. It's just really a user interface problem. And that can sort of, if people are having like difficulties with this, I feel like any user interface tweaks can be released as a bug fix.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it might be, the level of commitment is significant for me.
Then we should probably not try to get it done for this release.
Right.
Like it sounds,
Okay.
it sounds like we're not ready to pull the trigger on this, and doing it half-assedly isn't really probably the best solution.
Well, it depends
Right.
if you think anyone's going to write anything in contrib to leverage it. And I think like where we are now, the number of people who are coming up with crazy new ideas to do stuff in contrib is very limited. But what we would be adding if we added this as like a starting point for contrib to solve the real problem. But if we aren't going to have contrib solve the real problem in the next 4 months, then there's no point in putting this in core in the next 4 months.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would also add that contrib can do this block copy and the region copy approach
Right now.
trivially. There's nothing stopping contrib from doing exactly what's in the pull request, because the pull request just adds 2 new blocks, just like any other block in the system, with hook block info and then a block class.
Then I don't see why we don't try it out in contrib first for the next release. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like there is a risk in getting it wrong in core, so we should try it out in contrib.
okay.
Yeah, a very good point. Okay, we really need more feedback in the actual issue. I love that we can talk about these during these weekly meetings.
I'm taking notes into the issue.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thank you, Jen.
Guys, how about this idea for the master block placement issue, if there was no actual layout that was holding the configuration for the block? I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, it is.
Have it in a neutral place and then share it there so that there's no conflict.
Right. It would be a lot like the custom blocks listing, that there's a list of custom blocks that you edit the custom block and that affects all of the places where that custom block is used. It would be very similar that if you could just configure an arbitrary menu block, for example, without any layouts, and then place that single menu block, the customized version, in all of the layouts. Exactly. Yeah. And then you're right. There wouldn't be any interdependencies between layouts. The block would just be configured on its own independently of all of the other layouts. It's a great idea, but one that takes a lot more work than the current solution. Yep. Okay. Is there anything else to add on that issue? Any other discussion? Those issues?
Well, just on the thing that you said, Nate, I personally wouldn't mind if it took us longer to get it right, and we did actually get it right. So if we get the other 3 features in for 1.6, and we need more time to make it work in a way that it wouldn't cause trouble in the future, then so be it. Let's have it on 1.7.0 or something.
Okay. And of course, we can move the current approach into contrib and see what kind of feedback we garner from that, if any. Okay. Okay. Next item on the agenda is menu and breadcrumbs cleanup, which is 2156. This issue was added really late, actually, into our overall release cycle as being an item that we would like to address, and it's still in the almost brainstorming phase, which makes me think that if no further activity happens, like in the next week on it, that it should be tabled. Because right now we don't even have any code backing it up. I think we've got some pretty solid ideas, but yeah, there's no code behind it at this point. And with the need to not only come up with the solution, but then also test it comprehensively, that this is looking like a really skeptical item to actually complete, which is issue 2156. If anyone is interested in doing a little bit of menu cleanup, that one is free and available for the taking. And the last one that we have on here is this ongoing issue about improving the rich text editor. It's a meta issue at 1087. Last week, we actually made some progress on one of these things, that we restored the browser-based spell check. But then we had that kind of introduced a a regression that the right click, now we need to figure out how to deal with the right click to actually make it so the spelling suggestions work. So there's a follow-up issue to that that needs additional work, essentially. There's a bunch of other sub-issues in issue 1087 that are free and available for the taking. I don't think any of them have any progress made that is notable at this point, unless I'm missing something. But at this point, the spell check item is the only one that so far has been moving forward for 1.6.
The right click menu, does that do it? That just has like copy paste functions, right?
It depends, actually, because anybody can put additional things in there. I think that we have things like the table plugin, for example. If you drag in the table button, then you can add tables. And then right click is used for things like add column and add row. So it's a little bit deeper than just copy paste.
All right, because it seems like copy paste and stuff like that, again, something just better handled by the browser. So it seems like we remove those functions and don't show a menu unless someone clicks on a table or an image or something.
Yep. And I think there's some discussion going on in that issue, and we can just keep going on right there in 2386. Okay, that's it for the 1.6 release. There are other items tagged for 1.6. You can get the full list from the GitHub issue tracker. And as we make progress, we'll be merging anything with that tag in. If there's something that needs review or that is ready, please use both the combination of a milestone to tag it as 1.6, as well as the label to tag it as a needs review or reviewed issue, and that'll help us go through the pull requests, or the issues that have pull requests and get through those reviews. That's it for the 1.6 update. We've got 2 weeks yet. Let's go get them. Next up in the agenda, we've got the community growth section, which Tom is going to be taking today. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Nate. Looking at community growth, there have been a total of 7,738 Backdrop CMS downloads from backdropcms.org/download. That is up 87 downloads since the last meeting. There's been a total of 342 projects for Backdrop CMS on GitHub, no change since our last meeting. 394 total user accounts on backdropcms.org, an increase of 7 users since the last meeting, and 59 total Backdrop contrib authors, no new authors since our last week. That's all.
Excellent. Well said.
Thanks.
Okay, upcoming events. We've got a calendar at backdropcms.org/events. You can check there for upcoming events that will feature Backdrop CMS camps and conferences at which Backdrop speakers have been requested or Backdrop community members have been encouraged to attend. I don't think there's any notable items at this point in the immediate future. That's it kind of for the overall meeting. We move at the end of this meeting to open it up to any general questions, discussions, anything that needs to be brought up and covered at this time. Anybody? Okay. Well, in that case, let's get cracking. I'll see you guys. Let's see. Oh, anything for next week? Anything that we should add or remove from the agenda?
I added a comment that maybe we should talk about only 1.6 issues until January 1st. So that would be next week and the week following.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Okay. And that'll give us just kind of further focus our team on those efforts, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, that's it. Well, see you guys in the issue queue and online. We're always in Gitter, of course. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining, and thank you everybody for watching. Okay, bye guys.